Hey everyone, it's Sarah Whitten of Sarah Whitten Yoga and Movement, and I'm hopping in here to start a series this week of talking about the responses that I got from posts that I put up related to posture and alignment in some groups of singers and voice teachers that I belong to. So feel free to share this video in groups that you're in that have singers and voice teachers, or if you have a page for your studio, or you're just a singer who has a business page, feel free to share this video and help communicate the message to others. So one of the things that came up in the post that I put up was this idea of our anatomy and how we're built. And I wrote a few notes so I don't go too far off the rails and just talk at you today. And one response that I got that really intrigued me was this. And this woman said, "The problem lies in that we are all built differently." And another response included a line saying, "I go into a sequence aligning them according to their anatomy." And I thought both of those are great jumping off points for starting a discussion about all of this. So here's the question. Are we built differently? Does my anatomy differ from another woman's anatomy, or does a man's anatomy differ from another man's anatomy? And here's what I would say. We are all essentially built the same. We have the same pieces, parts. That doesn't change. Outside of our genitalia differences between male and female, it doesn't change. Where we differ is in how our physical structure is shaped over the course of our lives. And that is really what I want to talk about today, because that concept of changing your shape is called casting. And you're probably all familiar with the idea of a cast that would go on your leg. Let's say you break your leg, you get a cast for, 6 or 8 weeks. And when you go and get that cast taken off, your leg looks very different than when it went into the cast. Probably it's smaller. Muscles have atrophied as the bone has been knitting itself together. Tissues have changed. And the way that we restore function to that leg bone and the leg, let's say it's the lower leg and you've had a cast from your sort of on your foot up your ankle towards your knee. We've held the ankle joint immobile while the leg bone is healing, and we then have to restore function because it's been casted, and maybe the leg, say this is your leg, this is your ankle, it's been in this shape for 6 or 8 weeks, and so your ability to move your ankle and walk because your calf muscle has atrophied and you're not used to dorsiflexing and plantar flexing your foot, you go to physical therapy and you work on things that are going to restore function and bring back mobility and strengthen your muscles and mobility in the joint. So when we apply casting to our bodies as a whole, we can see that all the ways that we have and haven't moved in our lives are creating limitations in how our joints function. So when we think about, let's see, if we talk about a tucked pelvis, you are not genetically predetermined to have a tucked pelvis. Everybody has a pelvis that's capable of neutral, barring, some kind of a congenital issue that comes up or whatever. 99.999% of us could have a non-tucked, a neutral pelvis. So where did the tucked pelvis come from? Well, from the time that you are about 5 years old and go off to school, you are sitting, number one, and you're sitting in seats that have a sort of bucket shape to them. So chairs, classroom chairs, have a little bit of a bucket. It's going to bring you kind of back onto your tailbone. The seats in your cars are bucketed so that you're going to come back onto your tailbone. A very soft couch, a soft chair, or you're just freaking bored in a class and you kind of slump over. So everything about our lives and sitting is encouraging us to roll back onto the tailbone sacral area of your pelvis, which is going to cause it to be tucked. So when you go to stand up, your body remembers the shape of that tucked position. So we have to then work to undo the short, tight muscles that have come about and the weaknesses that have been generated by all of those years of sitting. And how long is a school day? 8 hours? You know, I remember when my daughter went off to kindergarten, having been at a Montessori school where there were no chairs and desks. They worked on the floor, they got up, they moved. She would come home in kindergarten and complain about her body hurting because she was sitting in chairs for so much of the day. You know, they have what, a 20-minute recess time where they're out and moving around and maybe walking to one special a day, but the bulk of the time spent in chairs. So that is how we get casted in that way. We also have casting patterns in our breath. So how many of us have singers who are going to come at the end of the school day to have a lesson? Now, what have they been doing? They've been sitting all day long, more or less. The way that you are required to breathe while you are sitting is relatively minimal, especially when you're not mindful of it. You will just breathe to keep your body alive, and it doesn't take a whole lot of oxygen to do that. So we've got the we have to make this leap from what I would call shallow sit breathing into much more active singing breathing. But there's a disconnect because you have spent the entire day leading up to your voice lesson at 4:30 in the afternoon doing shallow sit breathing. And it's a challenge that so many teachers have brought up of like, what do I do? I've got this low energy kid. Well, it's really not the kid's fault or the adult's fault if they've sat at work all day and then they're coming to their lesson in the evening. It is a result of the way that we have not moved throughout the day. Our breathing responds to the way that we're moving. So you're actually doing a great thing for all the people that you're working with by helping their breathing to move in a new way. But when you're struggling with someone who's, you can just tell that they're not breathing appropriately, or you identify that their rib cage isn't really moving. Well, does it have to move in the rest of their life? And if the answer is no, you have to work on that in the studio. Now, the final sort of type of casting that I want to talk about is how many of you have pain in your shoulders, upper back, and neck. It's like, I think 99% of the population. That is the one area, along with the low back, that almost everyone, it's a universal that people, when they come to me, say, I've got these issues. I've got shoulder and upper back and low back stuff going on. So all of that stuff is related to how you have casted your body. What have you spent your day doing? Playing piano, typing on a keyboard, driving, carrying children, slumped over in your chair. So we've got imbalances. And the good news is none of it is permanent. It's all, as long as you're alive, tissue can change. But to circle back to what the commenters on my post put about this idea that we're built differently or we have different anatomy, we don't. We aren't built differently, but the way that those structural limitations show up in our body, that's where we're different. And I'm so passionate about the idea that we, as people who are working with voices, which it's a whole body instrument, right? We know it takes the whole body to sing. We have to be able to look at these bodies and be able to accurately assess where are their postural limitations. And we don't work with them by giving them an image or an incorrect postural cue. We work effectively by applying alignment. And I'm going to get more into this as the week goes on. I've got some really awesome imagery cues to share with you. And you can try them out in your body. And I've got some great physical cues to talk about too. And we're also I'm going to go in depth on the feet, because even though they are distal to your voice, they play a role, because it's the whole body in here is going to impact what's going on in the voice. So we have got to get the body closer to neutral to have optimal function. And what I've found is that a lot of people are offering up cues that either worked for them, and so they're sharing them, though they might not work for another person, or they're simply saying, bend your knees because that will get your pelvis neutral, without understanding what's really going on in the body. So when we use alignment, we put the body on a grid, so to speak, and then we can assess parts relative to each other. And it doesn't involve laying hands. It doesn't involve telling someone to imagine that they've got a string coming up out of their head. It's really just about getting to know your body and moving it. That's the other thing that I love about alignment, is it's movement based. If you have a singer stand, you know, they've got their, let's say, this is one of the descriptions, like feet in second position, bend your knees slightly, raise your sternum, but who stands still and sings, and who can walk and maintain that position? It's impossible. I actually tried it this morning as I was on my walk, because I was sort of contemplating what I would talk about today, and I'll get to that stuff in coming days. But so alignment is about movement. It's about parts moving relative to other parts and how we can move them so that you are less ouchy, right? You don't have to live with neck and shoulder pain and low back pain. It's changeable. You have to be willing to do the work, but it's changeable. And you can have a voice that is so much more free when you can get the body aligned. It's not good posture, it's alignment that we're looking for. So hit me with questions in the comment box. Feel free to share this with people that you think might be interested, and I'll be back tomorrow. I think tomorrow I'm going to talk about the images that people shared that they have either heard or that they use with people's voices, because that'll be a super fun discussion. So enjoy your afternoon, and I will see y'all later.